And how are we doing in America in terms of conquering this issue?
Probably better than any other country because we have the best law enforcement in the world and we have high-tech solutions that are unbelievable. The Homeland Security investigations where I came out of, leading the way, just so impressed. They're our best partners. The Internet Crimes Against Children task forces, which we have, are phenomenal. We support those as well, our foundation. But there's still roughly 250,000 children in the United States currently being sold into sex slavery. And that number, thousands of children are brought in from foreign every year. Here's the problem with America is that we are the #1 consumer of child rape videos in the world. Kids are still being brought over and they're still being exploited because if a trafficker can get that child into the United States, the price just went up. He's going to make a lot more money by bringing the product to the market where it's obviously where it's a higher value. And so there's a big problem. And this is why, this is one of the arguments that I made. I had the opportunity to brief the president and Congress and I wrote an op-ed when this whole wall debate was coming up because we've rescued the children in New York City who, but for the wall, they would have been rescued. The kids who were trafficked through the desert with no barrier. And I've talked to these kids, we get them out and they said, once they know, some of them are getting older now and they're looking back, what happened to them? There's one little girl who now works for us. She's in her early 20s. She was kidnapped at 12 years old in Mexico and she was brought up, no barrier, border or anything, marched right into New York City. And between the ages of 12 and 17 years old in New York City, this little girl was raped. We guess about 60,000 times before she was finally set free. And that's the fate of thousands of children. Now she looks back on this and says, you know what? I wish there had been some kind of opportunity, one last opportunity for me. Had there been a border or a wall where they forced the trafficker to take me through the port of entry and I saw that law enforcement officer who, by the way, these guys are trained to look for this. She said, I would have reached out. Help me. It's a one last chance. So I was going crazy during this debate about how a wall does nothing. I was like, tell that to these countless children who were raped hundreds of thousands of times that it means nothing, that there's no opportunity there. So we are a major part of the problem and should be a major part of the solution.
So I started this episode with speaking about prostitution, and I want to pivot there.
Yeah.
I was on a college campus, and some kids asked us, what is your opinion on prostitution? And obviously, my gut instinct that I wanted to say is that while I don't agree with it morally, I do think that people should have the right to do with what they want with their body. But then something in the back of my head said, don't put that answer out there because I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, because if prostitution was legal everywhere, there is no doubt that it would impact child sex trafficking.
Yeah. So I've thought long and hard about this because I too am very libertarian in my political ideals and love liberty, and I think people should have the right to do what they want to do. I have the advantage that I know who these bad guys are. And most of Amnesty International came out, and I very much disagreed with what their position was. They're trying to promote rights for sex workers. And I get where they're coming from, but they just don't know the bad guys like I know the bad guys. And part of what they're pushing, and in New York State, they're considering a bill to do the same thing. Part of the sex workers' rights, according to Amnesty International and what people are pushing for, is to preserve the rights of the pimp, of the manager of the sex worker. They claim that they need that. Well, I know these guys. Okay, I've been undercover in dozens of countries, dozens of cases. These guys they're wicked and they're evil and they're businessmen. And you can sell a child for double or triple what you can sell an adult for in the sex market. And so these guys would love to have their business legitimized. And now they're being regulated and they're shaking hands with government officials and everything's good. Of course, I'll never show you the 12 little children who are under 10 years old that I have in the basement, but they're for sale too. And they're going to use this new market that the laws have created for them and legitimized for them. And those kids will be hurt. I'm certain of it. I know these guys because I meet with them, and all the guys selling kids also have the adults for sale as well. And they're always trying to upsell you, like, but you can get a 12-year-old for just add on $500 more and I'll give you the 12-year-old. I got a couple of virgins too, that's $1,000. Wow. This is their business. And plus, when you go into these countries that have limited resources, they don't have enough, like I said earlier, to do these kind of proactive investigations already. Now you're going to utilize government time, right, that they don't have and resources to regulate this new market, leaving even less time for them to do what they weren't doing before, which is investigating the cases. So you've legitimized this thing, you've created a sex market. And so the question is this: what's more important? Preserving the rights of children from not being raped, or preserving the rights of an adult from being a sex worker? I'm going to choose the children.
Right, every single time.
Every time. And that's why I've come down strong on the position of no, do not legalize prostitution. Now, do not criminalize prostitutes either. I'm very much against any prostitute being prosecuted. Mm-hmm. I've seen too many prostitutes who, once they've come out and told their story, they were that 10-year-old. They were that 11-year-old. And so I would never, ever prosecute prostitutes.
So what I see that people try to do when people defend sex work, and especially, I mean, this is happening on a cultural level. I had one guest who explained to me, actually showed me that Teen Vogue, so, which is appealing to 13-year-old prepubescent young women, has a headline this past year that said sex work is real work. And they go on to defend why sex work should be defended, is defensible, and why we need to open up the laws. And all of this is sort of falling under the umbrella of sexual liberation. And it seems like we never can get sexually liberated enough, right? I mean, it just keeps going, and they need more sexual liberation. And I'm starting to wonder, and I guess just sort of ask myself the questions, if we're really kind of just hitting at, I guess, unweaving the moral fibers of our society. Women, no, we should be able to walk around the streets naked, and we should be able to sell our bodies if we want to. This is freedom. And then when you take a look at it, the thing that's supposed to be freedom is starting to look a lot like bondage. And we are encouraging. I mean, when you look up, and if you're a country and you say, well, America has legalized prostitution in all 50 states, if that was a circumstance, that's a market. I really wonder about where we're going culturally, and how this sort of contributes to what you say is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world.
And and this is the thing, before the interview, I was telling you, the root of that informs everything else is what this is. The fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world is the exploitation of children. And as the more liberal in that sense we become with sexuality, what you said is exactly right. You are leading these kids to bondage. Mm. You're going to create this socio-political environment where children are told, go be free, and go on Instagram and take, shirtless pictures and all these. I know the pimps the traffickers are watching. Their highest their best recruiting tool is our social media platforms. Mm. And I want to be your agent. I want to come do a photo shoot with me. That's how the kids in the United States, by the way, are being sucked into trafficking. So we are encouraging what they're doing in Vogue and other places. They're encouraging bondage. They just don't realize it because they're ignorant to what is actually happening in the underbelly of this whole country and culture.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. On your mark, get set, world, I give you Tim Ballard.
Hey, world, listen up. There's slavery, and it's not dead. It's alive. And Candace said something very important. She said that it's terrifying to talk about this, and that's my fear, that you're going to turn us off. It takes guts to listen to this interview. It takes guts to engage. And, I used to teach international politics at one time in my life, and my students would talk about, we talked about slavery in the 19th century. Oh, I would have been an abolitionist. I would have stood up. And I have to be the jerk, and it sounds, kind of jerkish to say this, but I had to tell them, you probably wouldn't have been, because understand this, people in the North in the 19th century, they didn't travel into South Carolina or Georgia to see slavery any more than you and I travel to Thailand or Mexico or other high trafficking areas. Not that it doesn't exist here, it does, but it's more hidden. And so look back at history, and if you probably would say, I would have been one of those abolitionists. I would have been Harriet Tubman. I would have been Frederick Douglass. Well, now's your chance, because the parallels are almost exact. It's going on now. Slavery is real. There's more people enslaved than any other time in the history of the world. And there's so much that you can do to help eradicate it and liberate and heal these children. So if you go to OURrescue.org or the NazareneFund.org, learn about how you can get involved to help us liberate the captive.
That was perfect. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
That was just, oh God, I was trying so hard not to cry.